The Noble Genie Paladin, arguably the strongest subclass to come out of the new Heroes of Faerun book. Some say it's overpowered. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's certainly very, very good. Question is, how do we get the most out of those new, fun, potent features? Well, I'm ready to show you how I think I'd do it. And I think it might surprise most of you, so I hope you'll come along for the ride. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, every week I take a deep dive into character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them, I like to theory craft about them. Not so that I can tell you the right way or the definitive best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both powerful but also fun to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you're just interested in theory crafting, or if you're looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm really glad you're here, so thanks for watching. My name's Colby. So, when I first got a glimpse of the new subclass in the new Heroes of Faerun book a month or so ago, check out my reading and reaction to all of those subclasses here if you want, as well as a conversation about feats and circle magic. There was one subclass, though, that stood out above all the others as the one that was most interesting, and possibly the most powerful, and no, it wasn't the Bladesinger, even though that was the first one I did build for a couple weeks ago, right? Big surprise right up there if you missed it. But no, it was, as I'm sure you know, the Oath of the Noble Genie's Pally. My goodness, did this subclass get some awesome toys to play with. And none more impressive to me than their main feature, really, right? At level 3, the Elemental Strike feature that lets you pile all kinds of extra things onto a Divine Smite, right? So yes, it went right to the top of my to-do list right after I did my Bladesinger build, of course. But as I sat down a few days ago to start trying to actually build the thing in a way that was fun and powerful, I seriously was stumped on how I wanted to approach it. More so than I've been with a build in a really long time, actually. That might surprise you. At first glance, it might seem fairly straightforward. Maybe you take a Warlock dip for Pact of the Blade, prioritize Charisma, and fire away. You could make a great double Genie build that way, right? I think, a Genie Warlock plus a Genie Paladin. That was actually my original plan. Or maybe, better yet, I think I would argue, build a nice dual wielder Pally. I think I just might argue that the new Noble Genie Paladin could very well be the best two-weapon fighter in D&D now. I mean, what does a dual wielder want? Weapon masteries for Nick, especially, right? So that you can make an additional attack with your action. And probably Vex for advantage. Check, check. A fighting style so that your offhand attacks still add your ability modifier in damage. Check. But then, above all, I think, with two-weapon fighters, right, ways to add damage to all of those multiple attacks you get to make as a dual wielder. And I think it's safe to say that Paladins, and especially Noble Genie Pallies, get more of those than any other class or subclass. Divine Favor adds a D4 to every hit, doesn't require concentration. Spirit Shroud can add a D8 or more if you upcast it. Radiant Strikes adds another D8 to every single hit. And then for Genie Pallies, yes, the new best-in-class spell for this kind of thing, Conjure Minor Elementals. So surely, when I sat down to do a Noble Genie Paladin build, that's the route I went, right? Actually, no. I know. I'm surprised too, and don't worry, I've got that build on my to-do list and I will get to it eventually, but today, for the first ever Genie Pally build I wanted to do something a little different, a little more unique, a little less obvious, perhaps. Because, yeah, like I said, the thing that excites me most about the new subclass isn't that they get Conjure Minor Elementals at level 13. That's awesome, but it's at level 13. And frankly, the spell doesn't feel all that special anymore. No, the most exciting thing is that Elemental Strike. I want to build around that. I want to play with the new toys. So that is what we're going to build around and focus on today. Because building a Paladin for strong damage is, I think, relatively easy. But if we focus on trying to get the most out of Elemental Strike, I think we can make a really solid, control-focused Paladin. or at least a solid single target control focused paladin who still puts out really nice damage, especially once you get a bit into tier 2 of play. And I don't think I've ever built a control pally before, have I? Well, I guess the Fright Knight a couple of months ago, but that was really only like half pally. And their control was potentially nice, but really just kind of rooted enemies in place. We'll be doing a little bit more than that, and will be, for all but one level at least, mostly paladin. Locking down enemies and tanking, supporting, and bringing down the wrath of the gods, or, well, genies in our case, on their less worthy foes, like all good paladins do. You ready to jump in? I proudly present D&D Build number 237, the Paladin Controller, the Earthbinder, the Elemental Knight, the I Dream of Genie Paladin, I Love Lamp, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, the Tectonic Knight, Paladin. Man, that is so good, but how can I make it work in, like, print as a video title? I think it's funnier when you hear it than when you read it, right? Paladin, oh. Down to Earth, Arabian Smites. Man, the hits just keep coming this week. Huge thanks to everyone in the Discord for the suggestions. Man, you guys seriously brought your A game. I've got to work some of those into the various thumbnails. I think in the end, I'm gonna go with my friend Kane's suggestion, the Paladjinn. Simple but elegant. I love it. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build this week. He does this every week. He's so good. If you'd be interested in following him to check out the other stuff that he's done, or maybe even trying to reach out to commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I will put links in the video description, as always, on how to do so. But first, I am so glad that World Anvil is the sponsor for today's video, because I am going to start building a character for my Daggerheart one-shot that I'm playing at PAX U in just a few days. And this gives me the perfect excuse to go familiarize myself with World Anvil's Daggerheart integration. So listen up. GMs, have you ever felt frustrated trying to build, manage, and keep track of your world and your campaign? Players, have you ever felt frustrated trying to keep track of not only your own character, but also all of the people you've met, places you've been, and events that have transpired over the course of your campaign? I get frustrated with those things all of the time. Or at least, I used to. Then I discovered World Anvil. In case you didn't know, World Anvil is the best software out there, both for GMs to build their homebrew world with, or to just use to manage a campaign inside of an existing world, and for players to interact effortlessly with that world. For you world builders, World Anvil supports over 45 game systems, including D&D and Pathfinder and Daggerheart and the Cosmere RPG and many, many more, and they even allow you to integrate your own game system if you so desire. But they make it incredibly easy to create wiki-style presentations of your world and your writing so that you can keep track of everything you build. They also have a fantastic interactive map builder, my favorite feature actually, that you can customize to your heart's delight. And even chronicles that combine timelines with those maps so you can plot and keep track of what happened where and when in your world, whether before your campaign started or during. Presenting information to your players has never been easier. And yeah, World Anvil is for players too, not just GMs. It not only makes it easier than ever to access everything your GM wants you to know about their world and campaign, but you can even build your character right from within World Anvil's site, like I'll be doing later for this Daggerheart character. I think I'm going to make a ranger, actually. Regardless of the game system you're using, though, keep your character sheet, your backstory, your spellbook, or maybe your hope features and domain powers, for me today, right? Your journal entries and session notes all in one place, the same place where all the info you need about your GM's world is also located, and just a click away. So please, if you haven't yet, do yourself a favor, go check out World Anvil. Sign up for a free account, if nothing else, to see what you might be missing. When you do, I would appreciate it if you would use this URL right here so they know I sent you. I'll put a link in the video description and the pinned comment, of course, as always. And here's the best part. If you decide to purchase a yearly subscription, use the code D4 at checkout, and you will save an incredible 51%. Yeah, 51, I know, it's so generous. Okay. Humongous thanks to World Anvil. Your support means the world to me. It really does. And I love the system that you've built. Okay, let's get back to the build. At level 1 for our starting class, yeah, we're starting Paladin. We want to beeline to the awesome elemental strike. So let's go. As for our species, I think I want to be an ASMR today, though thinking about it a bit, it almost feels a little odd for this build, doesn't it? Someone descended from a celestial being is in service to not the gods, but to genies? Maybe they had a falling out with their celestial ancestors? I don't know. There's probably a great story there as to why. I would love to hear yours. But yes, I like ASMR for the build for one main reason. The Necrotic Shroud option for our Celestial Revelation, right? That lets us transform as a bonus action once per day, and thus, when we take the Necrotic Shroud option, frighten enemies within 10 feet of us who fail their charisma save. That's kind of always cool and useful and a nice debuff to throw down for a character who's kind of trying to lean into debuffing and controlling like we will be, but I'll talk about why I think it's so great for this build, especially in a few levels. I will add that the little healing hands option that you get as an ASMR is also nice as like a backup healing option when we run out of other ways that we have to heal. For our background, I'm gonna say, as always, take an old one and customize it, or just make an actual custom background if you can, but if not, we could take Merchant, but I'd be a little saucy about it because it gives the origin feat I want, but not all the other ability scores. Same with the other two that offer Lucky now, Mulhorandi Tomb Raider and Wayfarer, because yeah, the origin feat I want is Lucky. I know, I use it a lot, but I'm not sorry. On-demand advantage for any D20 roll, proficiency bonus times per day is just nice. And we really want to get our advantage train started. This is the easiest way to do that. But as for ability scores, I assume we go the point buy method as always. And yeah, I'd like to get a 15 strength, take a +2 there, a 15 charisma and a +1, and then a 14 constitution. And yeah, none of those backgrounds give a strength bonus. So if your DM is forcing you to use a pre-written background from the books, that sucks, and I guess I'd probably go Flaming Fist Mercenary. It's new from the Faerun book, and that way I could get tough. I think that's probably the best alternative. I'm assuming we'll at least be able to customize an old background since we're told right in the 2024 Player's Handbook that we're free to do that. Anyways, as for starting equipment, I'm going to say grab some chainmail and then a short sword or a hand axe and a scimitar for now. Though we will be swapping later to a heavy weapon. Yeah, we are going to be wearing armor on this build. We'll talk more about that in a minute. For a weapon, you could go with a one-hander and a shield, of course, but I do want to try and maximize damage within our control paladin concept. So yeah, dual wielding for now. And I don't often switch like weapon setups in a single build much, so this is a little bit unique. But I do think it makes sense. Again, we'll get into this in a minute. So yes, as a Pally 1, we get weapon masteries. We get 2, right? And yeah, taking the short sword, or actually probably better yet, the hand axe would get us Vex. That says when we hit with the weapon, our next attack against that enemy before the end of our next turn is made with advantage. And, you know, there's not a lot of difference other than look between the hand axe and the short sword, other than the hand axe can also be thrown. So it just gives you a little bit of versatility there if you need to make a ranged attack, right? But as for the other one, yeah, we want to go with the scimitar because that gives us Nick, which says that the additional attack that we get from wielding 2 different light weapons that we usually make with our bonus action can instead be made as part of our attack action, leaving our bonus action free, which is really, really important for this build especially. And yeah, we don't have to use the short sword because there's no need for these weapons to be finesse weapons, right? Dual wielding doesn't require dexterity or finesse. It just requires that the weapons have the light property. And since we're not going dex-based, we're going strength, the hand axe works great. Later on, I think we're going to want to swap our masteries to probably the Maul, which would give us Topple, so we could force a Constitution saving throw when we hit with the weapon, and then, you know, if they fail, they're knocked prone. And yeah, even though it's a Constitution save, which isn't great, the fact that there's no limit to how often we can do this, we just have to hit them, right? Nor is there a size restriction on that knocking prone. It just makes it so strong, and would give us and other melee allies advantage on our attacks against that enemy until they stand up. But if you prefer, the Greatsword gives you graze, so you can do your strength modifier in damage even if you miss. It's kind of cool, but less effective the better our hit chance is and the lower their AC is, right? And then the Great Axe has cleave, so you could make one additional attack against a second enemy if they're standing within 5 feet of your original target. That's super fun when you can get it to proc. Anyways, more on those heavy weapons later. Just remember that we can swap out which weapons we have mastery with when we gain a level in Paladin, right? We also get Lay on Hands at this level, which gives us 5 points per pally level that we can spend with a bonus action and a touch to heal 1 hit point per point spent, or we can spend 5 points to cure the poisoned condition. Such a solid support feature, honestly, that makes even paladins not focused on healing or support at all pretty great backup healers. Finally, at this level, yes, we get spells, and I'm going to focus on 4 that we'll eventually want, right? Divine Favor is of course great in that it adds a d4 to all of our weapon attacks, we cast it with a bonus action, and it doesn't even require concentration. I will say that our bonus action is going to be in very high demand with this build. It kind of always is with paladins, but maybe especially for this one, so we're going to get limited use out of this spell. And you might even decide not to bother with it at all, and I wouldn't really blame you for it. If we could get it going before combat starts, that'd be great, but I'm not going to assume that. Then, of course, there's Bless. This does require concentration, takes an action to cast, and gives 3 party members an extra d4 to all of their attack rolls and saving throws. It's so good. And if nobody else in your party is concentrating on this, I would seriously try and find a way to work it into your rotation. It won't be easy, but it's probably worth it. I would want to get Cure Wounds, at least eventually, as a backup for when I run out of Lay on Hands points. But then finally, and perhaps most importantly for first level spells for this build to grab, Wrathful Smite. Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever actually talked about this Smite spell in a build before, but it's so very good for this build. It works like all Smite spells now in that you cast it as a bonus action when you hit with a melee weapon or an unarmed strike. It does less damage than other Smites, only 1d6 per level of the spell, but if the enemy fails their wisdom save against it, they are frightened for a minute. It doesn't require a concentration or anything to keep it going, but they do get to make another save at the end of each of their turns. Frightened is always awesome, but again, it's going to be especially good for what we are trying to do here. More on that later. Speaking of especially good, let me give a quick shout out to my channel members and patrons. You guys, thank you so much for your support. I couldn't do what I do without you, and yeah, I'm just so grateful for you. If you're not a member or a patron, I'd love it if you'd consider becoming one. There's a button down there, it says join, or if you look in the video description, you'll see a link to the Patreon where you can learn about all of the perks that I offer to my members and patrons. That includes write-ups that I do for each of my builds that you can have access to help you recreate the build yourself a little more easily, more quickly, without having to rewatch the video, access to the community Discord server, and access to the monthly live Q&A hangout sessions that we do. If you don't feel like you can or want to support the channel in this way, that's fine. Being here, watching, liking, subscribing, all of the regular things, those are also great ways to support, so thanks. At level 2, we get a fighting style, and I'm actually going to say that we should probably take the defense fighting style here. Wait, what? Why wouldn't we take 2-weapon fighting? That would let us add our strength modifier to the damage from our scimitar nick attack, right? That is true, but here's the thing. Under the old 2014 rules, paladins and rangers could swap out their fighting style anytime they were able to get a new feat for their class, right? But now that fighting styles are themselves considered feats, that little bonus versatility is gone, unless you're a fighter. Fighters are still told that they can swap fighting styles, and it's anytime they gain a fighter level now. But Pallies and Rangers are stuck with their choice, unless your DM says otherwise. So I'm going to say let's grab defense here instead to add, 1 to our AC, or maybe blind fighting. That's awesome to have when you need it. But yeah, something more universally useful. Don't worry though, we will get to that 2-weapon fighting before long. Bear with me. We also get the Paladin Smite feature at this level, which just says that we always have the Divine Smite spell prepared and can cast it once per day without spending a spell slot. Divine Smite also lets us spend a bonus action when we hit to do an extra 2d8 now of radiant damage plus 1d8 more for every level that we upcast it, and an extra d8 against fiends and undead too. That free casting is nice, especially for us since we plan on casting specifically Divine Smite pretty often. Why is that? Quite simply because at level 3 we get our Paladin subclass. And yes, of course, we're going with the Oath of the Noble Genies. Since this is my first time using them, let's go ahead and read the flavor text of this new Pally subclass, shall we? Brandish the elemental splendor of genies. Paladins sworn to the Oath of Noble Genies revere the forces of the elemental planes. Through taking this oath, paladins draw power from the 4 different types of genies: Dao, Masters of Earth; Jinn, Masters of Air; Ifrit, Masters of Fire; and Marids, Masters of Water. In Faerun, many paladins who swear this oath hail from Kalimshan, a land teeming with genies. Paladins who swear this oath often undertake quests that take them all over the realms and across the multiverse, including the elemental planes. These paladins share the following tenets: sow the seeds of creation amid the ashes of destruction, lead with splendor and grace, and respect the elements and fear their wrath. Okay, this is pretty cool. It kind of helps me get an idea of how I might want to flavor this character conceptually, get a good backstory in place. Admittedly, I do struggle a wee bit with a paladin who's less sworn to a deity or an ideal and more to a genie, or I guess just the elements. It makes perfect sense for a warlock, I think, but this just feels like a very different paladin to me. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, it's just different. Anyways, all paladins get Channel Divinity at this level, which says that twice per day, and recovering 1 use on a short rest, we can use Channel Divinity in order to either use Divine Sense to detect celestials, fiends, or undead, or, yes, as a genie paladin, use Elemental Strike, which is really the big showstopper feature of the subclass. So let's get into it. Elemental Strike says that when we cast Divine Smite specifically, so other smite spells don't count, I really wish they would, but that's okay, then we can burn a use of our Channel Divinity to immediately do one of the following 4 things. Dao's Crush causes Earth to rise up around our target and grapple them. No save. Best of all, while grappled, the target is also restrained. This is amazing, and it's the thing that we're going to be building around today, but let me go over the other options really quick before we discuss more. Genie's Escape lets us teleport to within 30 feet, similar to Misty Step, right? But then also lets us become semi-incorporeal until the end of our next turn, which means we have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and immunity to the grappled, prone, and restrained conditions. That's a pretty incredible defensive move, especially when fighting enemies who really like to grapple, restrain, or knock us down, right? Very good. Then we've got Ifriti's Fury, which just deals an extra 2d4 fire damage to our target and to one other creature within 30 feet. Yeah, it's not a ton of damage, and yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to try and do a 2-target cleaver build with this feature someday. But finally then, Marid's Surge, which is a really cool kaboom push that forces each creature of our choice within 10 feet of us to make a strength save or be pushed 15 feet away from us and be knocked prone. That'll be really fun and super cinematic, if and when we can make great use of it. Let me fight on a narrow bridge and get surrounded by enemies, please. Okay, let's get back to Dao's Crush. So, first of all, grappled is great in that it reduces a target's speed to 0 and gives them disadvantage on attacks against anyone but you. But adding restrained on top of that makes this kind of crazy, since it also means all of their attacks are made with disadvantage, period, regardless of who it's against, and all attacks against them have advantage as well. Oh, and they have disadvantage on dexterity saving throws. Now, usually, remember, to avoid being grappled, an enemy gets to make a strength or dexterity save now, right? Their choice. But then, once they're already grappled, they make an athletics or an acrobatics skill check, again, their choice, against our DC. The fact that they get no chance to save against the initial grapple and restrain means that they're just guaranteed to be restrained at least until their turn. And at that point, they would have to waste their entire action just to try and break out of it. So even if they do, this is a really great control move to potentially help your party kill an enemy and or remove one enemy from the fight for at least an entire round. Now, I should address this here. A few weeks ago, my good friend Chris, Treant Monk, put out a review video of this subclass. Watch it right up there. It was a good one. In that video, he argued that since this grapple was being made by us, it fell under the purview of all other grapples, meaning that in order to pull it off and maintain it, we had to do what we always have to do when grappling now, right? We have to have a free hand, we have to stay close to them, and they can't be more than one size larger than us. I think he makes a compelling and well-reasoned argument. I personally happen to believe that it wasn't Wizards of the Coast's intent that our character is actually the one doing the grappling here, for a couple of reasons. One, it says that the earth rises up around the target of our Divine Smite. That, to me, says that, yeah, it's the earth grappling them here. It's like a magical spell effect restraining them, similar to Web or Entangle, right? That feels especially true since, unlike normal grapples, the escape DC for the enemy here isn't affected by our strength score, like usual, right? But instead by our spell save DC. Now, I'm not necessarily here to say that I'm right and Chris is wrong. I'm just saying be aware that some people feel one way and some people feel another. So be sure to discuss this with your DM in a session 0 before you start playing, right? Because yeah, if your DM rules that you are grappling and need to have a free hand and stay in range, etc., it will vastly change how you build, what weapon setup you're using, etc. Obviously, I'm building under the assumption that this grapple is being made by the earth, as if we'd cast a spell, so I'm not too worried about needing a free hand, etc. But make sure that you know how your DM is going to rule it and plan accordingly. Maybe if you can play with older books, consider going Loxodon so that you can still grapple with your trunk, and then still use both of your hands for weapon attacks, right? All good? Okay. Let's move on for now. We also get the Genie's Splendor feature at this level, and I mean, if this is a ribbon, it's one heck of a ribbon, but alas, it's one that we won't be making too much use out of. It's basically unarmored defense for paladins, akin to the Dance Bard or the Draconic Sorcerer, right? Telling us that if we're unarmored, our AC equals 10 plus our dexterity modifier plus our charisma modifier, and we can still benefit from a shield. That's super cool, but since we're building around strength and basically dumping dexterity, we're just going to be better off with armor. I think this feature could be especially good on, say, a single class dual wielding paladin who didn't need to have a 13 strength in order to multi-class, right? You don't have to have a 13 strength in paladin, remember. You only need to have a 13 strength in paladin if you're going to multi-class out of paladin or into it. Yeah, I'll get to that build one day, I think. Oh, also, we get proficiency in acrobatics, intimidation, performance, or persuasion, so that's nice. Pick your favorite there. Finally, we do get some extra genie spells here at this level, and for us here, that's going to be Chromatic Orb, Elementalism, and Thunderous Smite, which are all situationally useful, but nothing that I'm going to plan on building around. Okay, at level 4, some of you are going to do a hard double take at this, but I am going to take some fighter levels. What the crap? That's it. He's totally lost his marbles. Okay, let me explain. Actually, no. I'll explain in a minute. For now, just go with me here and hope that it will make sense in a minute. For now, I will just say that, sure, if you're going down this crazy train with me, you might have wanted to start out as a fighter at level 1. Being control first focused, I wanted to beeline to that Dow's Crush, among other things, but sure, starting fighter would have meant a Constitution saving throw proficiency, which is nice, though concentration isn't going to be as big a deal for this build, but maybe better than that for us. It would have let us get that 2-weapon fighting style right from the get-go, yeah? Making our damage a wee bit better for those first few levels, and since fighters do get to swap out their fighting style anytime they gain a fighter level, that would have given us that bit of power and diversity right from the beginning. Feel free to do that on this build if you want, but we're here now, and I'm grabbing that fighting style so that our Nick attack does a little more damage. We also get additional weapon masteries here, 3 more of them in fact, so sure, maybe go ahead and grab those heavy weapon masteries now if you want, right? And then we get Second Wind, which says that once per short rest, we can use a bonus action to heal ourselves for a d10 plus our fighter level. At level 5, we're staying fighter. We're going fighter too. We get action surge so that we can, once per short rest, take 2 actions on our turn instead of 1, and that's always great for a burst or setup or whatever else we might need to do. We also get Tactical Mind, which says that we can burn a use of our Second Wind to add a d10 to a failed ability check, potentially turning it into a success. It's a nice bit of utility. But at level 6, we'd be a fighter 3, and that means we get our subclass, and this is where everything kind of comes together for us. And it's like the whole reason that I made this crazy decision to start taking fighter levels at level 4 in the first place. So what subclass was so important that we were willing to delay extra attack and aura of protection for it? No, not Eldritch Knight. Not Psy Warrior. It's the new Banneret subclass, of course. Wait, what the crap? Just kidding. It's Battlemaster. Oh man, some of you were flipping tables. Admit it. Okay, so, right. Battle Masters get the combat superiority feature, which gives us 4 superiority dice that we can use per short rest to fuel our attacks with, among other things. These dice are D8s, and we get to choose 3 maneuvers from a fabulous list. You go ahead and take whatever you want here, but the one that you absolutely have to take, and the whole reason I'm even here, is, you guessed it, menacing attack. It says that when we hit an enemy with an attack, we can use a superiority die, add the damage to the hit, and then force the enemy to make a wisdom save or be frightened of us until the end of our next turn. Why is this so important? We already have Wrathful Smite. Okay, so here's the thing. Dow's Crush is awesome in that it just automatically grapples and restrains when we use it, right? But its big weakness, if it has one, is that enemies can make an ability check of their choice, right? Acrobatics or athletics, on their turn to get out of it, and thus end our lovely shutdown move that we can only do like twice per day, recovering 1 use on a short rest right now. So we really want that grapple to stick if we are trying to be like a controller. Well, guess what happens when an enemy is frightened? They can't move closer to us, don't care. They have disadvantage on all of their attacks, don't care, I already had both of those things, right? But more importantly, they have disadvantage on, that's right, all of their ability checks as well. And that means the likelihood of them escaping that grapple goes down significantly if we can make them frightened right away. And that's the problem with trying to rely on Wrathful Smite or our ASMR Fear or just about any other way that we could frighten someone. They almost all take a bonus action or an action, and if, in order to get Dow's Crush to work in the first place, we first have to take the attack action, hit the enemy, and then use our bonus action to Divine Smite, well, that means we wouldn't be able to Wrathful Smite, for example, or use our ASMR Transformation Fear, right, until our next turn. But by then, the enemy might have already broken out of our grapple, right? We needed a way to apply Frightened or a similar debuff right on the very same round that we are using Dow's Crush, and I think Menacing Attack is the best way to do so. So, if you are more concerned about doing damage and just being like a regular old paladin than you are about trying to maximize your single target shutdown capabilities, no worries, go ahead and beeline to Pally 5 or probably 6, right, before you do fighter levels. I wanted to really try and get the most I possibly could out of Dow's Crush for the build today, and I think this is the best way to do it, personally. Now, we're not done yet. Some of you are probably saying, or maybe even typing in the comments, yeah, but everyone's immune to fear. This tactic sucks. Okay, let's address that. In the current monster manual, there are 79 monsters immune to the frightened condition, out of just over 500. So that's about 15%, not exactly a majority. Also, about 1/3 of those that are immune to frightened are fiends or undead. And I mean, we love fighting fiends and undead, right? Bonus damage, yay. So there are maybe only 50 or so that will make us really sad. Call it 10% of the monster manual. And of the enemies that you're likely to be fighting at any given level, much smaller than that, right? I like our chances of getting into a fight against opponents that we're happy to be fighting. And if we do run into a non-undead, non-fiend who's immune to fear, probably a construct, but there are a smattering of other monster types too, well, being forced to adapt and switch tactics is fine. Just as long as your DM isn't like intentionally trying to counter you by only throwing frightened immune enemies your way, you should be fine most of the time. And sure, maybe we'll look for other ways to debuff ability checks later on, but for now, I really love this tactic for control purposes. Oh, we also as a battle master get the Student of War feature, which gives us an extra skill and tool proficiency. Okay, at level 6, it's time for our first damage report. Understanding that we've built for control first, damage second, let's discuss what combat would hopefully look like for us at this level. On round 1, we'd pick the nastiest, scariest enemy, run up to them with our weapons drawn, right, and make 2 attacks against them. And yeah, that's the nice thing about being able to do 2-weapon fighting and having Nick, right? Considering the way that we've built especially, at least we're still getting 2 attacks on our turn consistently, despite having delayed extra attack. Anyways, we'd use a luck point for that first swing to get advantage, right? Make an attack with our Vex weapon, and then with our scimitar, hopefully with advantage if that first attack hit, yeah. Adding 3 from our strength modifier to each. As soon as one of those attacks hit, we bonus action Divine Smite for 2d8 more damage and activate Dow's Crush, causing the ground to come up and grapple and restrain them. we simultaneously add a D8 superiority die to the damage and apply menacing attack, hopefully frightening them as well. And sure, let's say that we action surge on round 1 to just add a bit of burst damage and to really make sure that at least one attack hits so that we can get our restraint going, right? On subsequent rounds, we've got options. We could continue to attack the same target, doing the same thing, except maybe using Wrathful Smite to keep the fear going if we're nervous about running out of superiority dice, right? But then again, superiority dice reset on a short rest, and we currently have more of them than we have spell slots. So at this level, that's probably not happening. But maybe if they succeeded on their save against menacing attack, Wrathful Smite is a nice option to have as a backup. If we have both of our Channel Divinity uses, we could, of course, ignore that first target that we've got restrained, leave them locked down, right, and then turn our Wrath and Control onto a second enemy. For number crunching purposes, I'm just going to assume that on round 2, we won't need to try to reapply Dao's Crush, or can't for that matter, and so we'll just cast Divine Favor with our bonus action, as that will get us a bit more average damage over, the entire fight than just smiting every single round. I will assume we're continuing to use Menacing Attack though, since the fear from it lasts only one round, right? And we want to keep it going. On rounds 3 and 4 though, yeah, I'll burn our last 2 spell slots for a Divine Smite. We've got 3 spell slots at this level, but remember we can Divine Smite once per day for free. Okay, under all of those assumptions then, averaged over a 4-round combat encounter, against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 33 damage per round on average, and against a 15 AC, it would be 30 DPR. And compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date, it's near the bottom of tier 3, sure, but we didn't really build for damage, did we? And I mean, 30 or so damage per round with as hard as we are potentially shutting down an enemy, maybe 2. Keeping an enemy restrained is pretty potent. They're not getting to your squishy friends, they're making lousy attacks, they're getting hit a lot more easily, and maybe burning their turns to try and escape, probably failing if they are trying to get out. That's some serious shutdown power, and for those of you who might be arguing, like, a caster with the web spell could do about the same thing, I'd say, sure, maybe, though enemies get to save against even the initial casting of web. And you gotta be careful not to hit your friends, and it requires your concentration, which we could be using for, say, the Bless spell, for example. And that web caster is definitely not doing as much damage as we are while throwing down that restraint. So sure, pros and cons. Is this the best controller ever? Nah, but it's super fun. And does really decent damage while controlling. And now that we've laid the control groundwork, it's gonna get a lot better from here. Okay. At level 7, I think it's time to go back to Paladin for a bit. We've delayed a bunch of important things to get that menacing attack, and again, if you wanted to just go Pally 5 or 6 first, hoping that, Wrathful Smite would be enough to get you through, maybe especially if you've got an ally with Silvery Barbs or something, right? To force that crushed enemy to re-roll a successful ability check to get out, then that's fine. Maybe just getting an entire round of restraint against an enemy will be enough for your party. Restrain them, everyone dogpile on them. Even if they don't die, they waste their turn trying to escape. And even if they do escape, as long as everyone keeps the focus fire going, they're probably dead before their next turn, right? But speaking from personal experience, not all tables are great at focus firing. And not everybody builds optimally. And sometimes you're fighting enemies who are really hard to kill. So we opted to bolster our control first. But now it's time to build that damage. At Pally 4, then, we finally get our first general feat, and yeah, I think I'd take Great Weapon Master. That might seem a bit cuckoo, but as soon as we get extra attack next level, making 2d6 weapon attacks plus 4 now from strength, right, because the feat adds 1 to our strength, plus what will soon be 4 more damage from our proficiency bonus thanks to this feat, that's going to outdamage 3 attacks with a d6 weapon plus our strength mod and nothing more, right? If we were continuing to dual wield, even if we add extra damage from Divine Favor. So let's go ahead and plan on switching to heavy weapons soon, because yes, at level 8 we would be at Paladin 5, and that means we get extra attack so that we can make 2 attacks when we take the attack action, or sure, 3 if you want to stay with 2-weapon fighting, that'd be fine, honestly. Just take something else as your feat last level, right? I'd say Mage Slayer, maybe. Dual Wielder is a little because we're wanting our bonus action for so many other things, but you could do that. If you wanted the option of yet another attack with your bonus action, once you finally had a chance to have it freed up. But yes, when crunching numbers, I'll assume that we're swapping to like a maul at this level. We don't necessarily need to be toppling our restrained target, but there's going to be plenty of times where we're going to be fighting other enemies who aren't restrained, right? And so, yeah, being able to topple them would be nice. We also get the Faithful Steed feature here, which says that we always have the Find Steed spell prepared and can cast it once per day for free too. That'll be some really nice additional movement, whether on or off the battlefield, if your mount can stay alive anyways, and there's room to maneuver them. It's not going to have an impact on our numbers, but I will say that if we've got both of our Channel Divinity uses to burn, especially, a steed would make it easier to like run up to one, hit and douse, crush, and frighten them. Then, our mount can take the disengage action and move us over to a second target to repeat the process if we wanted. Just a really nice movement buff if we can take advantage of it. Finally, at this level, we get second level spells. And there are loads of beautiful ones. Genie Pallies get Mirror Image and Phantasmal Force for free, both nice. Mirror Image especially, I think, for some solid additional survivability. But beyond that, yeah, sure, let's grab Aid to heal and increase the max hit points of 3 party members. Lesser Restoration to get rid of some debilitating conditions. Warding Bond is an amazing tank spell to help keep an ally safe. And Prayer of Healing is incredible. It's 10 minutes to cast, and then it heals and grants the benefits of a short rest to probably your entire party. For us, that would mean recharging our superiority dice, our channel divinity, and our action surge in just 10 minutes. Yes, please. Oh, one note. At some point along the way here, I would grab Searing Smite. It's a first level smite spell that I haven't mentioned yet. But now that we've got second level spell slots, we could potentially use it if we were going all out for damage to hit a little bit harder with our bonus action, since it would, at the second level, do 2d6 fire damage when we hit, and then 2d6 more on the enemy's turn. Potentially even more than that if they don't make their constitution save to end it, but I always just assume that they do, since in all likelihood the enemy is going to be dead by round 3 regardless, right? Okay, at level 9, I'm gonna say, actually, let's go back to fighter, because I really want that feat so we'd be a fighter 4. And before you berate me for delaying Aura of Protection like a madman, I'll just say that, remember, our menacing attack frightened DC is based off our strength modifiers. So doing this, taking that feat, bumping our strength, capping it at 20, will both help our damage and our control, potentially. So it's not the worst move ever. If you'd rather get Aura of Protection first, that's fine, do it. It won't have a huge impact on the numbers either way. But at level 9, it is time for our next damage report. Okay, since last check, we've picked up extra attack, Great Weapon Master, to add 4 damage to both the attacks that we're making with our maul now. That hits a lot harder than those light weapons did. Capped our strength at 20, and even picked up some second level spell slots that, sure, I'll say we're using on rounds 3 and 4 for Searing Smite, still assuming we're doing everything else the same on rounds 1 and 2 to get our Dow's Crush going and then get Divine Favor going. I'll still say we're gonna action surge on round 1, and yeah, that'll hit a lot harder now with a 2d6 weapon that adds our proficiency bonus from Great Weapon Master, right? So now, averaged over a 4-round combat encounter against enemies with a 10 AC, we would do 61 damage per round on average, and against a 16 AC, it would be 57 DPR. All right, now we're talking solid control and damage, almost double since last check. And compared to other damage-focused builds that I've done to date, that's like bottom of tier 1, top of tier 2 at this level. And yeah, bringing some fantastic control and debuffing on at least one enemy while we're at it, which feels pretty incredible. Though, yes, as is so often the case with a lot of my builds, we're burning a lot of resources to get there, right? So lower those expectations if you're having a lot of combat encounters per day. Though admittedly, even just a short rest between encounters, or even just giving us 10 minutes so that we can cast Prayer of Healing, right, is going to keep our damage at almost these numbers through like 3 or 4 encounters per day. And we've even got a little bit of Lay on Hands healing and ASMR healing and other support potential that we're bringing with us to boot. So I love where we're at. Let's keep it going. At level 10, gotta go back to Pally. We'd be a Pally 6. Yeah, Aura of Protection. It's one of the best features in the game, especially for those who like making their saving throws. And who doesn't like making their saving throws? I love making my saving throws. I say that all the time. This adds our charisma modifier, so 3 for now, to all of our saving throws and those of our allies within 10 feet, as long as we are not incapacitated. So good. You should seriously consider not delaying it until level 10 like we have. But now that we've got it, can we do some more multiclassing? Please. I promise, it's just a teeny weeny dip. Because, you see, at level 11, I want to take a level in Warlock. Wait, what? You've waited all this time and now you're dipping Warlock? That's right. Let me explain. I, of course, considered doing this from the beginning, taking Pact of the Blade, being a little more charisma focused, and I still think that route is worth considering. I ended up going fighter first for all of the reasons that I've already spelled out, but now that we've got sort of like our core concept and extra attack and aura of protection under our belt, yeah, I still think Warlock is worth a dip because it will give us a couple more ways to help ensure that enemies stay grappled by our Dao's Crush, even if they're immune to fear. Because, you see, at Warlock 1, we get an Eldritch Invocation. Just one of them, but that's all I really need because I want to take, not Pact of the Blade, not now that we've got our strength capped at 20, but Pact of the Chain. Why in the world would we want that at this point in our career? Well, Pact of the Chain lets us have a familiar, like the Find Familiar spell, right? But it gives us some cool extra options for what that familiar can be. One of those options is the lowly Quasit. The Quasit can go invisible, meaning it's easier for it to take the help action if you want it to, maybe save yourself some luck points potentially, and scout for you a lot more safely, right? But more importantly, for us, if the Quasit lands its attack, it automatically gives enemies the poisoned condition. And in case you needed a reminder, the poisoned condition causes you to have disadvantage on all of your attack rolls and, yes, your ability checks. So why not go this route instead of the Battle Master menacing attack route? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, our familiar doesn't get to attack unless we sacrifice one of our own attacks to allow it. I vastly prefer, for damage purposes, simply making our regular attack and then adding menacing attacks extra damage and frighten to that attack, right? Especially since the Quasit only has a +5 to hit, yeah? Sure, if they're attacking a restrained target, there's still a decent chance to hit. And the really nice thing is that if the Quasit hits, the target is automatically poisoned, no saving throw. But then that brings us to the other downside, right? The poisoned condition. It's great, but no other condition sees as much immunity from monsters as the poisoned condition. There are 119 in the monster manual that are immune to it. About 50% more than those that are immune to being frightened. Still, that leaves us with almost 400 that aren't. So again, it's not a bad thing to try doing, but it just seemed like of the two, frightened or poisoned, we'd be better off going for frightened first, especially considering the damage implications. But now that we've got it, and the other most important things for the build, right? Sure, it'd be great to have a poison option as well, as a backup, right? Because while sure, some monsters are immune to both poisoned and frightened, that's even more rare. Only about 40 or so are immune to both. But guess what? Even if we run into one of those 40 in our adventures, Warlock gives us another nice option because we also get Warlock spells here. And sure, grab Armor of Agathis for little temporary hit points that, returns damage when you're hit, but the most important spell for us here would be Hex. Because Hex, though it requires concentration and, perhaps more damningly, a bonus action both to cast and to transfer once our initial target is dead, causes our target that's hexed to take an extra d6 of damage from all of our attacks. So, in all of these ways, it's very similar to Hunter's Mark. But then, unlike Hunter's Mark, it also tells us that we get to choose an ability score when we hex a target, and the target then has disadvantage on all, ability checks made with the chosen ability. That's awesome, but also not perfect. First, because we won't necessarily know which ability to choose, right? For a lot of monsters, it might be fairly obvious looking at them if they'd have a better strength or dexterity score, but not always. But more than that, it requires a bonus action to cast, so unless we somehow started the fight with Hex on our target or delayed our control until round 2, I suppose, we'd put Dao's Crush on them, but then wouldn't be able to hinder their ability scores until our next turn. And by then, they might have escaped, like we've been talking about, right? So while I appreciate the additional options that a Warlock dip gives us to hamper ability checks, I just felt like Menacing Attack was a little cleaner and better and more immediate, right? Still, now I can see hitting them with menacing attack on round 1, then like Hex on round 2, which would let us save our superiority dice if we wanted, among other things. Both the poison and the Hex are nice backup options. And, I mean, I'm not going to complain about a first level Warlock spell slot that resets on a short rest for more smiting either. But after this little dip, as much as I'd love to do the double genie thing, yeah, I think at 12, we got to go back to Pally. There are just too many other good things waiting for us in Paladin, and I want to explore more of what the genie Pally has to offer. So yes, we'd be a Pally 7 at this level. And as a genie Paladin, that means we get Aura of Elemental Shielding, which is quite good. It adds elemental damage resistance to our Aura of Protection, acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder, right? We can only choose one of those damage types to have resistance to, but we can change it at the start of every single turn. That's some fantastic versatility, and I love that we'll never be in a place where we felt like we made the wrong choice, you know? At least maybe not after one round of taking fire damage when we were anticipating acid or whatever. Still, really cool. At level 13, we would be a Pally 8, and that means we get another feat, and we are 100% just bumping Charisma. It is good for our Aura of Protection and for our spell save DC, and remember, that's the DC that enemies are going up against to break the grapple. And yeah, you know, for that reason, sure, starting Warlock, getting Pact of the Blade, and being more Charisma focused would be nice. But even if we had been like Charisma sad, right? Mathematically, giving an enemy disadvantage on their ability check to escape a grapple is worse for them than increasing our DC by 1 or 2. So like if we had gone Warlock instead of Fighter, right? But yeah, we should definitely be prioritizing Charisma by this point, if not sooner. Okay, at level 13, it's time for our next damage report. Since last check, we've done a lot of really nice things to increase our defense, our support, and our debuffing, which should make our control even more potent. But we haven't really done a lot to improve our damage. Good thing that's not really what we were building for today, right? I mean, I guess we upped our proficiency bonus. That's good for Great Weapon Master. And let's go ahead and say that on round 2, instead of casting Divine Favor, we're using Hex to really try and ensure that our target stays locked down. It's a little muddy in that if our controlled target dies, we won't continue to enjoy the extra damage to every hit with Hex like we would with Divine Favor, right? Which doesn't require anything to just transfer it, right? It's kind of cast on us, not our enemy. But I suppose if we were in a boss fight, or maybe if we're the only one attacking our controlled target while everyone else handles the rest of the battlefield, I don't know. It's almost a totally insignificant difference to assume Hex over Divine Favor. Just give me this one little point of damage per average hit, please. We need something here, lest we invoke the wrath of the gods of the spreadsheets. Oh, and I guess since we have 3 second level spell slots now, we could potentially Divine Smite on round 1 with a 3rd level slot, Hex on round 2, and then still Searing Smite on rounds 3 and 4, yeah? These things taken together are fairly small increases, but against enemies with a 10 armor class here, we would now do 66 damage per round on average, and against a 17 AC, it would be 62 DPR. And that's only about a 10 to 15% increase, depending on the AC, so yeah, not huge, but I do really like the way we feel a lot more filled out now. A really potent Aura of Protection, nice additional debuffs, a better charisma score. We've matured a lot. But compared to damage-focused builds to date, at this level, we're kind of back to like bottom of tier 2, top of tier 3 territory. Not a terrible place to be for one who brings so much more to the table other than damage, right? Right. Let's see how it looks coming down the home stretch. At level 14, we would be a Paladin 9, and that means we get Abjure Foes, which lets us take a magic action to force a charisma modifier number of enemies within 60 feet of us to make a wisdom save, or, you guessed it, be frightened of us for a minute or until they take damage, even limiting them while frightened to only be able to move or take an action or a bonus action. This would be kind of awesome in that even if an enemy in our Dow's Crush managed to free themselves, if they were under this effect, they still wouldn't be able to do anything, not even move upon freeing themselves. So yeah, one more nice arrow in our debuff and fear quiver. The fact that it takes an action makes it pretty tough to use simultaneously with our Dow's Crush, and yeah, the fact that it would require a use of our Channel Divinity means less control via our Dow's Crush. But yeah, using it once we've already got them locked down and maybe, to impact other enemies too, it's pretty nice. but one that I would use sparingly, I think. That said, we do get 3rd level Paladin spells here at this level too. Genie Pallies get Fly and Gaseous Form for free. Both really nice options when you need them, but beyond that, no big surprises here for what I think we should take. You know, Aura of Vitality is really great for healing. Revivify in case an ally bites the bullet. Daylight is really useful when you need it. But then, sure, Spirit Shroud, if we wanted to add a d8 of damage to all of our attacks that didn't need a bonus action to keep transferring, like Hex. It also is nice in that it slows nearby enemies and keeps our target from healing. At level 15, we would be a Paladin 10, and that means we get Aura of Courage, which gives yet another buff to our Aura of Protection, now giving us and our nearby friends immunity to the Frightened condition. We are seriously the masters of fear here, maybe even more so than that Fright Night build was. It's pretty cool and thematic. We are a scary genie who never gets scared ourselves and protects our allies from fear too. At level 16, we would be a Pally 11, and that means we get Radiant Strikes, which just straight up adds a d8 of damage to all of our weapon attacks now. That's awesome, and I will say that with this plus Spirit Shroud, and especially at Paladin 13, which we won't quite get to on this build, but that's the level where we get Conjure Minor Elementals, right? At this point, the damage from dual wielding gets really close to the damage from like a heavy weapon with Great Weapon Master. They're almost on par, and yeah, with Conjure Minor Elementals, dual wielding takes a slight lead. Just something to keep in mind if you are planning on playing this character into late game, or especially if you are going to do a high level one-shot or something. Dual wielding lags behind from about level 8 to this point, which is why I switched, yeah. But at the very late game, it kind of regains the lead. I've committed to the Great Weapon Master feat, so I'm not going back at this point, but it's worth considering if you're planning for late game. Maybe take the Dual Wielder feat instead of Great Weapon Master or something. Don't forget, we do get our 3rd use of Channel Divinity per long rest, which will be nice for a little extra shutdown potential. Or, I mean, sure. We haven't really even talked about the other cool things you can use Elemental Strike for, right? It'll be nice to have other options to pull out of your bag of tricks when you really need them. But then finally for us, at level 17, we would be a Paladin 12, meaning that we get yet another feat, and I think we absolutely bump Charisma to cap it at 20 here for all of the same reasons that we wanted to bump it last time. It just kind of improves almost everything we do. But this then brings us to our final damage report. Since last check, we've added the potential to concentrate on Spirit Shroud instead of Hex. Do we use it? Sure. I mean, we've got 4 uses of Menacing Attack, right? That reset on a short rest, and Wrathful Smite, and ASMR Fear, and Quasit Poison as options to debuff our enemy's ability checks. I'm not sure how often we would have really been using Hex anyways, considering the bonus action to transfer targets. I'll say we're casting Spirit Shroud on round 2, and then just going with Searing Smite on rounds 3 and 4. I guess we've got 3 3rd level spell slots now, so sure, let's pretend that we're blowing them all, right? We're also getting an extra d8 of damage to every hit from Radiant Strikes. Let's not forget about the Hue feature from Great Weapon Master feat, right? If we crit or kill an enemy, thanks to the feat, we get a free bonus action attack if our bonus action is available. We're doing just as much damage with a weapon attack as we are with a lower level smite, maybe more depending on the smite. So it might make a lot of sense to hold off on smiting if we think we're going to kill an enemy on our turn. I won't assume that we are, especially since, I mean, if we do crit, which would proc Hue, we'd do more damage by just applying a Divine Smite in that case to the crit, right? Thus doubling that smite's damage. That would be better than a bonus action Hue weapon attack that probably wouldn't crit, doesn't get to add the extra damage from Great Weapon Master, right? Then again, if you got some solid bonus action damage and can save a spell slot, especially if you've got a really great magic weapon, I mean, it's all going to depend on the fight. Just kind of know what your options are and weigh them accordingly. Anyways, beyond all those things, we've just continued to add lots of great defensive and support and control potential, which is kind of what we were mostly building for in the first place with this character, so that's awesome. But now, against enemies with a 10 AC over 4 rounds, we would average 86 damage per round. And against an 18 AC, it would be 81 DPR, which is a solid damage increase over last time. But compared to damage-focused builds that I've done to date, that puts us in about the same place as last time. Bottom of tier 2, top of tier 3 at this level, which, as I keep saying, is a pretty great place to be, considering the level of control and support we're also bringing with us to the fight. So, let's get into some final thoughts. I feel like we've gone long today. Just me? Why is my voice so hoarse? The tier score for this build, if you take the damage that they do at each of the enemy armor classes, at each of the 4 damage reports, and just average it into one big number, we get a 54, which would put them right at the bottom of tier 2, which, if I'm being honest, is actually higher than I thought they'd be when I decided to try and go like control first for the build. Maybe that speaks more to the power of the Paladin and the Genie Paladin than anything, right? So, what else is there to say? I mean, there are so many ways that we could have gone with this build. An early level in Warlock with Pact of the Blade and more charisma focused, though that gets a little lumpy if we want to take Great Weapon Master, since that feat bumps our strength or dexterity, right? And not our charisma. Or, yeah, forget Pact of the Blade and get an earlier poison option via Pact of the Chain, like we did, but just start Warlock. Alternatively, delay any multiclassing until Paladin 5 or 6, then go for Battlemaster. Our control potential might not have been quite as good from levels like 6 to 8, but our damage would have been better. And maybe that would ultimately be more valuable for your team. Some decent occasional control that might only last for 1 round, but better damage, earlier aura of protection, more and better spells. I do think that like a full single class dex and charisma focused Genie Paladin is going to absolutely destroy the charts. And I'm looking forward to finding out, but I'd also still love to get to that double Genie. In the end, the subclass is just so good, and maybe its greatest strength is that it presents such a diversity of ways to use it to make a really powerful character. Heck, maybe the best of all of them would be a mostly Warlock or Gishy Bard with just a Pally dip, right? Maybe the double Genie is mostly Warlock. But where we ended up felt fun and flavorful and unique to me, and that's what I was craving most with this new subclass today. Just a way to really try and build around what is, to me, their most powerful and interesting feature. And I love the idea of really being able to just hard shut down a single enemy or 2 on the battlefield while putting out some solid damage and support. Sure, the build as we made it would probably feel a lot better at like 8 and 9 and 10 than it would at levels 4 and 5 and 6, but I don't mind sacrificing damage now for better control once in a while. I'm confident that it would be an absolute riot to play in your game, and I'm also confident in your ability to take the bones of what we've got here and craft it into something that you think would work best for you and your table. And ultimately, that's kind of my greatest hope for everything I do on this channel. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great day and a fantastic week. And if you don't, I especially hope that you'll hang in there and that you won't give up, because great days and fantastic weeks are sure to come. I hope that you'll do good and be kind, and that I see you again really soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Arabian nights like Arabian days, more often than not, are hotter than hot in a lot of good ways. What did you mean by that lyric exactly? Arabian nights neath Arabian moons, a fool off his guard could fall and fall hard out there on the dunes. Oh, I think Aladdin has got to be one of my favorite Disney movies. First of all, I have a massive crush on Jasmine, but that's not why. Because Robin Williams is freaking hilarious, I think is the main reason. Yeah, it's a classic. I love it. I'm going top 3, The Emperor's New Groove, Aladdin, and, Robin Hood. Yeah, those are my 3 favorites, I think. What are yours? One keeps focus and for players to interact effortlessly. It hurts, mama. Effortlessly. Okay. Go check out, but not all tables are great. Eventually help your party kill an ally and or like remove an ally. Oh, not kill an ally. Don't kill your allies, people. I'm going gaseous. It's a good thing you're just watching this and not smelling me. Yeah. I don't think I said that. So, okay.